What's up, and War Eagle War Rapport family? You got Ike Jones back with another morning drop. Today, we are talking about the new acquisition at safety transfer center, Jerrin Thompson. Y'all know how we do right here, War Rapport style. Let's drop it on them.
You are now listening to the War Rapport. Drop.
Morning drop. It is Tuesday, January the 16th. Hopefully everybody's Tuesday is off to a good start. You got Ike Jones back in here in the pilot seat, talking a little bit more Auburn football and the position of safety for Auburn football. Before we get into the conversation, hopefully everybody will do us the necessary. That's going ahead and sharing the video at the War Rapport out there on all your social media. Like the video and subscribe to the channel. Let's get those subscription numbers jumping up in here. And if you're out there re-listening on podcasts, go ahead and share the content as well as give us a 5-star review. But let's get into the conversation. Auburn is getting more activity going on in the transfer portal. First and foremost, if you're in the state of Alabama or down here in the South and you're dealing with this snow situation, it ain't snowing for real where I'm at right now. It's like a little slight situation, but hopefully y'all are being safe out there, not driving crazy if you're listening to this. It's snowing. Be careful out there. But yeah, let's get into the safety conversation. The position of safety is where Auburn has made their newest move with the acquisition. Needed to do some work here in the transfer portal to help out at the position of safety. There's a lot of young guys on this team at that position, but you're losing a lot of snaps, right? When you look at the position, there were 4 guys that left via the transfer portal and or graduation / declaring for the NFL draft. Austin Osbury and Marquise Gilbert both left via the transfer portal during the offseason. And then you had Jalen Simpson and Zion Puckett, the guys who took the vast majority of the snaps at safety this season for Auburn, exit and go to the transfer portal. So there are a lot of snaps that you see walking out of the door. Jalen Simpson and Zion Puckett accounting for the most of them, but over 4,000 snaps for Auburn in experience leaving via the transfer portal. And you got to try to replace that. Now, you've got some admirable replacements that were already on your roster in the likes of Caleb Wooden, who had played a good amount of snaps, and then Donovan Kaufman, who had also played a lot of snaps for you. But there just isn't a ton of experience roaming in that secondary. And so it's going to be interesting to see how Auburn decides to rotate the younger guys in, as well as trying to figure out who of these new guys that are going to be on here in here are going to be able to play a lot of minutes. When I say younger guys, I'm talking about guys that were already on the roster, that your Terrence Loves and that sort, or some of the guys that are coming in that are true freshmen. But to try to help get some more experience into that defensive backfield and figure out how they're going to stem the tide, enter transfer center Jerrin Thompson. Jerrin Thompson is coming over from Texas. Let me just make sure I have all of his stuff pulled up here properly. He is 6 foot 191 pounds. He's a senior coming over from Texas, played all 4 of his seasons at Texas. So this is his first transfer. Didn't do like a JUCO stint or anything like that. And he was the 8th highest rated safety in the Big 12 last year, number 88 in the country in his PFF rating is what I'm talking about here. And he comes over and brings in some of the experience that I'm talking about. 2,153 snaps of experience does he bring over into that defensive secondary. So this is a solid acquisition in the transfer portal. We'll take a look at some of his film, of course, for those of you who are part of my Green Name Gang. We will get in and we'll look at his film a little bit more closely and see what exactly he's bringing to this defensive secondary. But I think what he adds for you is, again, depth and experience to a room that needed it, with seeing so much of that walking out of the door. Something that will potentially help some of these young guys get in here and figure out what's happening a little bit more quickly. Again, you just don't have a lot of people that have played a lot of football at safety, and that's typically going to be your defense's quarterback. So, I love what Caleb Wooden was able to bring, and He'll probably get a lot of snaps in that secondary. You also got guys like, talk about the four guys that walked out of the door, but you have now, as far as freshmen and new guys, there were 12 guys in that safety room, so I don't expect any more safeties to get added now that you've got replacements for all four of those. So unless someone else walks out in the transfer portal after spring, you should have your safety room set. But you've got Caleb Harris, the true freshman that's coming in, Kinsley Faustin, the true freshman, and then you've got the JUCO safety in Laquan Robinson that's going to be coming in, and now you add Jerrin Thompson to that room. So you're back up to your 12 that you had last season as far as safeties are concerned. So you should be able to move forward and figure out what you're going to do in some of these other spots. But it is going to be interesting to see how that battle plays out. Again, I talked yesterday about position battles and what was going to be interesting for the spring. Everybody's zeroing in on the quarterback battle, but I think it's going to be interesting to see what the safety battle looks like, because there's a lot of excitement about some of the young guys that were already on this roster that have not gotten a lot of playing time. And now you're going to be adding some depth and experience to that roster. Let's just kind of look at the roster as it was last season for guys that didn't get a chance to play that people are very excited about. Terrence Love is back there. Sylvester Smith played a little bit in the bowl game. Terrence Love did as well, but Sylvester Smith played a little bit in the bowl game. You like what you see out of him. He does, kind of look more like that box safety kind of guy that's going to be able to cause havoc and be a run stuffer. 5'11", 186. Then you got C.J. Johnson, who you haven't seen very much of so far. That's going to be available for you this year. So of those three, which one of those guys is going to step up and really move in? Because, if we're projecting based upon really just what it looks like initially, I would say Jerrin Thompson, you pencil him in as one of your two deep there at the safety. And then there's a lot of people really excited about what Laquan Robinson could potentially bring to this defensive secondary. So he's a guy that I would definitely look out for. But it also just calls into question kind of what the utilization of these guys is going to be, and what is Auburn's defensive scheme going to look like going into this next season. That's an answer that you don't really have right now, because you only have a co-DC. Who is going to be sitting in that co-defensive coordinator seat right next to Charles Kelly? And what kind of defensive scheme are they going to be running, right? We had the 4-2-5 that we were running last year, and that means that you're going to have less linebackers on the field, or you're going to have that hybrid linebacker position, which I really loved that Ron Roberts was running. Are we going to have a similar type of situation out there this season, or is it going to be, a scheme that's going to employ more linebackers, where you're being a, 3-4 or 4-3? Like, I don't know what it's going to be like. More and more defenses are running some sort of hybrid scheme, whether that is a 4-2-5 or a 3-3-5. But whoever the defensive coordinator is going to be is going to really determine a lot of what those position groups and how many different types of people or the makeup of the type of guys that they want to put out there to be able to cover their scheme. So it's going to be an important question that needs to get answered here shortly. Like we've talked about this, the coordinator positions. I wanted to see some movement on that this week. And haven't heard any word yet, but I do anticipate that they're going to be moving in the direction of trying to hire somebody soon. A lot of questions out there about whether or not, the delay is about Chris Kiffin, and they want to hold off to see what's going to happen with the Texans in the playoffs, man. But, Texans keep winning. You can't keep holding off hiring your defensive coordinator, or I wouldn't think that you would want to when there are quality DCs that are out there that you could go ahead and get on board. There was some speculation as to whether or not somebody actually asked this, I think, on a previous live that we have, whether or not the team across the state having some vacancies available would slow down the process of Auburn trying to hire a defensive coordinator, where they've already hired their DC. So, or at least I don't know if it's been inked yet, but there is a guy connected to that job right now already. So shouldn't be any competition from them for trying to get someone on board here at Auburn. So we should have our pick of the litter of the guys that we want to go after. It's just about finding a guy that's going to have the right fit for what Coach Freeze wants to have for his defense, and one that's going to be okay with pretty much having his staff already chosen for him, because I don't think that we're going to reshuffle the deck, considering we just hired most of these guys last season and this offseason. So whoever that defensive coordinator is, they're going to walk into a staff that's already there, and it needs to be someone who they can work with as a defensive staff, because you don't want to have the butting of heads there inside of the facility when it comes to that defensive staff, as far as what the philosophy of how they want to do and how they want to handle player rotations and all that sort of thing. So a lot of things need to get ironed out, and I expect for those things to get ironed out here in short order, because we got to get this train in motion. All right, I want to get over here to your comments. I appreciate you all for dropping in here with me. As always, the morning drop is brought to you by show sponsor Rogue Shop. Make sure you head over to rogueshop.com. Use code Rapport when you do that. Get you a little something off at America's #1 online dispensary, and that is the Rogue Shop. For sleep, stress, anxiety, pain relief, they've got something for you. Make sure you hit them up over at the Rogue Shop. I am going to hit up the greatest community out here in the interwebs, the Green Name Gang, and see what you guys are talking about this morning. I definitely want to hear from you all. Let's see here. Chris O says, or Chris O, I don't know if it's O, like holding out or O. Anyway, Bug is going to be a huge leader in our secondary this upcoming season. Instant starter, in my opinion. Speaking of Jerrin Thompson, that is his nickname, Bug. So looking forward to seeing what he brings. And I am definitely looking forward to getting into this film for him. Trust me. Green Name Gang. Make sure you keep your notifications on. Your boy is dropping film for y'all like crazy right now. So make sure that y'all are aware when we get ready to get into this Jerrin Thompson film. Corey Weber making his predictions for starting safety, saying Thompson and Robinson starting safeties. I like it. Again, a lot of people are very excited about Laquan Robinson, the JUCO guy that has been added to the roster. And now with Jerrin Thompson, there is a potential for a very solid defensive secondary, particularly at the safety spot. So going to be interested in seeing how this plays out. Again, you've got guys like Caleb Wooden that have played some solid minutes for you. Is he ready to be your presumptive starter? Is he ready to get in there? Are they going to be rotating safeties? Like, somebody needs to be the quarterback back there that's going to be playing the vast majority of those snaps. So we're going to see how that works out. Big Gap 78 asks, do we have a DC yet? And, of course, he knows the answer to that is no. So, yeah, we're going to see what happens with that. Hopefully, listen, by the time maybe you're hearing this tomorrow on the podcast and you're hearing me say we don't have a defensive coordinator and we have to go back and say, hey, nah, that changed between the time that this was recorded and when you're hearing this. I'm hoping that it is, but we will see. Hopefully, maybe some news will break right now while I'm recording this live with y'all. JJ Brand feels like the secondary is leveling up. Listen, I believe that the overall talent on this roster is going to be in a significantly better place from the standpoint of what you see as far as experience and what you see from star rating. So I just don't think that talent is going to be able to be something that's going to be a continuous conversation of, oh, we don't have the talent. I think we had the talent to be able to compete last year. I didn't think it was a championship roster, but I did think it was a competitive roster, better than a 6-7 roster. This next season, this roster is definitely going to be better than a 6-7 roster. So, talent all across this team is leveling up, including this secondary. So I'm looking forward to seeing how we're going to be able to go out there and really make some noise in the SEC this season. Corey Weber jumps back in asking, is Kite trying to get a 6th-year waiver? Speaking of Mosiah Nasili Kite, he hasn't made any announcements about going to the draft, and he has not played in any of those Senior Bowl type situations. So he does, unless he's just saying I'm done with football, I would assume that that's what he's attempting to do. He still definitely has time to declare for the NFL draft, but I'm assuming that he is going to try to get an additional year of eligibility because of a medical waiver. And if that is the case, I mean, shoot, they're giving people 7th years at quarterback. Why can't he get an additional year? I don't know. But if that's the case, that would also explain why, Auburn is not as motivated to go out there and go get another defensive lineman. Maybe they feel like an additional year of Nasili Kite down in the trenches will help out a lot with their defensive rotations. I don't know. I don't know what's happening with him right now. I haven't spoken with him or anyone else around that situation, but that is something to monitor, considering that he hasn't made any overtures about what his next step is going to be in his career. Chris S. says, I'm not familiar with the safety room specifically, to be honest. I know we got some good talent back there. We talked a little bit about some of the guys that are in the defensive secondary. You know, we could just run down the names. Looking right here at the roster, you got Donovan Kaufman, Caleb Wooden, Terrence Love, Sylvester Smith, C.J. Johnson, Griffin Speaks. That was the transfer over from Baylor, right? So he followed Ron Roberts over from Baylor. Going to be interesting to see whether or not he stays for his final season here at Auburn, or whether he was tied to Ron Roberts specifically and maybe he graduates and wants to transfer and go to Florida. I don't know if he's that connected to him as far as, his allegiances, but we'll see. Mac McClinton, Paul Thompson Jr., both the walk-ons from last year. We talked about Caleb Harris, the freshman, Kinsley Lador Faustin, a true freshman coming in, Laquan Robinson, the aforementioned, rounding out that group coming over from junior college. So it's a really good group when you add Jerrin Thompson in there. A lot of talent in that defensive secondary at safety. See what else we got going on over here. Appreciate everybody dropping in with me this morning. JJ Brand says, I'm so glad McGriff is back. We have the talent in the secondary, but his development skills are much needed since experience is so-so. It's a good point here. Wesley McGriff coming back. Now, he is going to be coaching cornerbacks, but co-defensive coordinator and safeties are probably going to be Charles Kelly. So he's going to be running that room. But I'm definitely glad to see Wesley McGriff back helping in that secondary. And it's going to be interesting to see kind of what the marriage of philosophies are between those two of how they want to be able to run the defensive secondary. So I am looking forward to seeing how all of this stuff works out. Chris S. says, what are the chances Keontae Scott doesn't move to outside corner in 24? I think he's going to be allowed to compete at outside corner. Last year, he was, so they had safeties and star backers who was like the nickel back, were coached in the same room last year. That's going to be another thing as to whether or not he's going to be, whether or not the, star room is going to be merged with the safeties room, or whether or not it will be like all of your cornerbacks / nickelbacks will all be in the same room together. That's something that they're going to have to work out and how they're going to do that. But I think he's going to be given the chance to compete at outside corner. I think that that's what he wants to do, and I think they're going to allow him the chance to do that. But I'm not sure what the chances are that he doesn't move there permanently. I think, when you look at the corner position, there just isn't a lot of experience there either, right? That's a room that didn't lose a lot, fortunately, in the transfer portal, but there's just not a lot of experienced guys to go in and compete there. Love what you've seen from Kaden Lee and J.D. Rim so far, who is still on the team. There's been a lot of blah around him. Champ Anthony, I liked what I saw from him at spots there. Colton Hood played well, I think, in the bowl game. So there's some guys that could definitely get out there and work. But again, there's not a lot of snaps of experience at outside corner. So that's going to be another position battle that's going to be very interesting in the spring. There's a lot of question marks out there for this team right now about who is going to get to play and how those rotations are going to work. So the spring position battles, I think, are going to be very interesting. Daniel Moultrie asks, Ike, y'all mentioned this last show, but do you think Coach Hugh Freeze is waiting to announce the OC and DC at the same time again? Potentially. I don't think that there's been a hire yet for either of those things. So, maybe the OC has already been worked out with somebody internally and they just want to announce those at the same time. I don't think that they've hired a DC yet, because the way people get chatty around that facility, it'd be hard for me to believe that a defensive coordinator has already been hired and someone doesn't know that. People know weeks in advance of the university actually announcing that, some sort of contract has gone out to somebody about something. So I just don't believe that there's been a hire yet. So I don't think that that's the case right now, and maybe he does eventually do it that way. I just don't think that there's been a hire yet. P-Pass asked, does Thompson directly replace Simpson or Puckett? And I guess you're asking which of those two does he play most like. I think, let me just say this, and I've said this before about Jalen Simpson. I don't know that you just really replace Jalen Simpson. He's just from a talent perspective, he's just kind of he's built a little differently as far as his ability to run at his speed. I mean, at his size. And being a solid tackler. But I think he is probably going to be more in the mold of a Simpson than a Puckett. As far as I think Puckett was more of like a general out there getting people lined up sort of thing. And Simpson was kind of more of the playmaker. And I don't know. Honestly, let me just retract that. I actually don't know. I mean, he's a rangy guy, more like Simpson in that way, and that's why I was going in that direction of who he'd replace. Puckett wasn't as rangy; he's more downhill in the box type of guy. And I think Laquan Robinson fits more into the mold of a guy who's going to be downhill in the box. But Laquan Robinson's kind of rangy as well. So, I think from, an overall standpoint of those two replacing those two, it maybe balances out a little bit because you get guys that are more similar, and so they can move around and adjust and change the picture a little bit differently for quarterbacks. Again, I am very interested to see how this safety position looks as far as snaps going into this season. James Barnett jumps in and says, Ike, if it's taking this long, especially for OC, why not just hire Damian Craig? Just saying, dragging this out isn't necessary, especially for OC. I don't know that Damian Craig has even I don't know if he's interested in coming back to Auburn. I don't know if there's interest from Coach Hugh Freeze and Damian Craig. So, I mean, I don't think it's as simple as just hiring Damian Craig as if, he's waiting for the phone to ring for Auburn, or Auburn has him on the list and they're just waiting to get on the right terms. I don't know what the thought process is right now around the offensive coordinator hire. So we shall see. James Morris asks, have you heard anything on maybe getting Des Ricks from Bama since Charles Kelly was his main recruiter? Have not heard anything about Ricks. I did see that he entered the transfer portal and probably is not going to be the last person from that team that Charles Kelly had links to entering the transfer portal. I think it's going to be more so about for that is, do we have space in the particular room? And I don't know that we need to add anybody else in that room. And so somebody would have to, and it's kind of, we're getting into the 11th hour in concerns with that, as far as people being registered for school coming up here in this semester, and therefore impacting their availability for spring. So I'm not sure what additional moves Auburn is going to be making in the transfer portal, and those kids from Bama, especially the younger ones, are going to be needing to make some decisions here coming up very soon in regard to their eligibility for spring. So if they want to be able to play in spring, then they need to be registered for classes here coming up. I've heard a lot of different dates out there, but I do know last day for registration is supposed to be tomorrow, the 17th for Auburn. So everybody needs to probably try to find a home and figure out what they're going to be doing school-wise here in the next 24 hours. So next 24 hours should be very interesting in terms of all of that. All right, I'm going to get out of here. I appreciate everybody for jumping in here with me. And once again, the Morning Drop is brought to you by our show sponsor, Rogue Shop. Make sure you hit up rogueshop.com and use code Rapport when you do. Like the video before you get out of here. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And give us that 5-star review over there on the podcast places, and we definitely appreciate that. Be back at you guys with another Morning Drop tomorrow, but until then, and as always, War Eagle.
Drop!